Welcome back to SEOleverage.com. My name is Gert, and this is episode 88. And today we're going to learn a lot about how to write helpful content. Google is just at the time of recording this, rolling out the so-called helpful content, and we still need to analyze what this is going to be about. But I thought it would be a good moment to talk to an expert when it comes to content creation. And I'm really pleased to welcome Katrina McKinnon to the show. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Gert. It's lovely to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Your company, CopySmiths, is focused on writing really creative SEO optimized content that really performs very, very well. We have seen this with a few of our own clients already. Could you, before we talk about this update and content, could you give us a brief summary of where you're coming from? How do you come to content creation?
Okay, so CopySmiths was born out of me running a web agency for 20 years. And I got very tired of doing absolutely everything, from PPC to design to website development to SEO. And I ended up being very average at all of it. So after 20 years, the one thing that I absolutely loved and would dive right into, and we were naturally really good at it, was blogging for our clients. And so even though we had agency clients, the one thing that I was able to scale and do really well was to create fully fledged blogs for them. One of our very last clients as an agency that we worked for, on that retainer kind of basis, whereas now, we just charge per article. Our last client, we started off, you'll love this. I know you guys love numbers. We started off with 800 uniques a month. And by the time we finished up with them, it was about 14 months. We were on 180,000 uniques a month. Wow. Yeah, it was like 250,000 impressions a month. And we were able to also get 60% of those visits over to a landing page. Mm-hmm. But the, sad thing was none of it converted. So it was kind of like this glorious moment where it was like, wow, really good at this content thing. And then the client was like, you're amazing, but none of it's converting for us. And that was because, there is a reason. That's because I have to justify this to everyone. There is a reason. It was because they sold a mileage tracker that was free in Australia. So, and in America, there's very inexpensive mileage trackers that, only cost a few dollars. And these guys were selling theirs for around about $200. So, and it had all the extra, but it had all the extra bells and whistles. And it was, it's a brilliant, brilliant product for corporate, but it was just, it was one of those things that's a big swing and a miss. But so that's how I came to it, was that I just kind of took that one part of my business that I adored and loved and that I just enjoyed doing, because I love content, and I like helping the world, so I'm like sitting pretty at the moment with the Google's update. But then, and I've built CopySmiths. So we've now got, I think, about 40 or 50 writers on the team. We're very highly process driven. And because I love SEO, I've baked all of that into our training and into our services. But really, we're just a blog writing service mainly for e-commerce stores. And that's all we do. We just do that. Literally, we do that one very small thing, that one thing, but we do it thousands and thousands of times.
There's so much leverage, and it's funny that you mentioned your story. We have a very similar story. I started out as a web programmer on my own, freelancing, doing web programming 60 hours a week or more, and then did everything what you could do in digital marketing, from email marketing to Facebook ads to LinkedIn and Google ads and whatever. And at some point, like, the only thing that was growing and where we got the best results was really SEO. So we combined the web development with SEO, and now with our app have found the perfect fit. And yet it's just, there's so much leverage if you can repeat similar things and add all the learnings. We saw this back in the days. I did a lot of lead generation, and once I niched down to, this was a fitness niche, it became just easier, because you could suddenly see kind of patterns, etc. And now we're niching down pretty much on SEO for a lot of courses, e-commerce sites, etc. And you see patterns again. You see this course about languages works in a very similar way than this is a course where they teach to how to play an instrument. And you can kind of leverage this. We're working on about 30, 40 projects. Usually you leverage like a point you see in one project and say, let's run an experiment here, track it, and see if this can also work for someone else, right?
Yeah, like if if I had one advice for my stupid younger self, when I couldn't find out where my pants were, it would literally be to niche down. I think that when people come to me now and they say, "Oh, I'm thinking about starting an agency," I sort of say, "Oh my gosh, I would rather dig my eyes out with a spoon than have to run an agency where I had to have all those different competencies." Because one little person, like once you get to a certain size as an agency, it's okay because you can hire all those people and really clever people to do it. But there's this sort of ceiling in an agency of about 10, 20 people where it that's when you have to step over that ceiling to get any bigger.
Absolutely. What I feel also from a client's perspective, when you have an agency, they get you so far, right? Because they do a little bit of everything. They obviously have people who do mostly Facebook ads and people who do mostly SEO, but they get so far. But then people that want to step up now suddenly need a content expert. They need an SEO expert. They need someone who really sleeps and dreams of Google Ads just to make sure that they get to the next level. And this is where we see really sweet spot for us. I see a sweet spot for you, obviously, as a content creator. And when we talk about content, so we have this update now, this Google update. It's called Helpful Content Update. As an SEO agency, obviously you as well, we always monitor what happens with an update, what changes. Sometimes in the past, we had a big Panda update, which was a huge content update. And this helpful content is said to be going in a similar direction where Google just wants to just clean up a little bit. We have this topic AI I want to talk a little bit about later as well, which is always a topic on in this context. What do you think is going to come with this helpful content update?
Probably nothing. As with everything. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there will be some changes. I think that there's only a tiny percentage of people who actually get affected, but that tiny percentage get very vocal. They get very noisy because, their world has crashed down, down around them. They've lost all their revenue, but it's because they've usually done other silly things, such as building, bad backlinks or, paying for sponsorships, whatever it might be. And so I think that eventually the algorithms catch up with those people, but because they see these updates coming through, they correlate them with their bad fortune, their luck, and then they really get noisy about it and sort of, make a big fuss. Whereas 95% of the internet are just not going to see much at all, either because Google literally hasn't crawled them and won't crawl them for quite a while, especially the smaller sites, they won't crawl them for 3 or 4 months' time. And then the bigger sites that do, they're already big sites because they already have helpful content. But I think that when people are panicking about it, the one thing I would say is what Google does is Google will often say, I'm reading literally from their, Google Search Central is, the helpful content update aims to better reward content where visitors feel that they've had a satisfying experience while content, And it's all about feeling and, maybe this, maybe that. And as usual, Google hasn't quantified exactly what helpful content is. But I think that's what I'd love to chat to you about is what I actually think those specific things are in helpful content, layout and components in actual blog articles.
It's so interesting. We've chatted a little bit before we started to record, and we have been on SEO in the last, I think, 10 years at least, with a very strong user experience focus. Because at some point, obviously at the beginning, I've been doing SEO for 20 years. So the first 10 years, we started out with white keywords and white background just to squeeze keywords in. And you wanted to rank for everything, no matter if it converted, if it made sense. You just wanted to see if it works. So these were the first 5-10 years, and we built tons of backlinks and all this kind of stuff. Then in the last 10 years, Google got a little bit smarter, in my opinion. You started seeing, okay, these search results suddenly make much more sense. You can't get away with everything anymore. It was still much easier to rank things than it is today. But I've always had the feeling Google doesn't really know a lot of things, right? So Google it's like me. I really don't know how to approach a crowd that wants to buy from me until I talk to them, until I get a little bit of a feedback, right? I get people on a demo and can show them what the app does and can understand what their problems are, their pain points, etc. So my theory was always Google throws results at people because they just have so many and just sees what comes back and what kind of signals do they pick up. And then once in a while there's an update and they pick up all those signals and apply them to the algorithm, shuffle the cards again and see what comes out. What are your thoughts about
Yeah, they're just like the rest of us. They are completely making it up as they go along. So I totally agree that it is much more about getting down in the weeds and actually going out and putting the algorithm out there and just seeing what happens. Like they're not able to predict what's going to happen to everyone's websites or anything like that, because it's, it's what chaos theory or whatever it might be. That might be a little bit too highfalutin for this, but yeah, I totally agree. They are just as we've evolved our businesses, they're evolving their business and their knowledge and and all this data that's available now on the internet. They're just trying to make sense of it. So yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's jump right in. What do you think makes content helpful?
Okay, so very, very specifically, visual images. So I'll go through like a bunch of things that we put into our content and that I know is helpful because we've watched people in Hotjar using our content and we know what works. So, and again, like Gert, exactly as you said, it's about just you don't know whether a customer's going to buy from you unless you go out and talk to them. And it's exactly the same way. Like if you want to know how people are reacting to your content, you just get a tool like Hotjar so that you can actually watch people moving through your website. And I guarantee after you've watched a couple of hundred videos, you'll have a very, very clear idea of what they find helpful. I'll start with one, visuals. So images are super important, but not stock photography images. What we tend to do is we tend to get one of the client's product images, or we get a lifestyle image and we will overlay text on it to talk about the benefit of a product. So instead of just putting, I don't know, I've got a pen in front of me, instead of putting just a photo of your product on a page, we will often add a little bit of text in Helvetica, so that Google can read the text, has a chance at some point of reading that text, and say what a feature or a benefit to the reader is of that pen, for example. So that's helpful. Adding an image to a page with a bit of text in it and possibly a caption, that's helpful. Another thing that's really helpful are tables. So tables allow you to compare ideas or data, and it can be as useful as, what's the rainfall in Perth today, but it could also be the characteristics of different products. So fountain pens, I'll just pick that example again. Fountain pens, you might be comparing two types of pens for a graduation gift. And so data in a table, even in a blog article, is super important because it's another way of the reader experiencing and absorbing that content. So we, for example, I don't know, we've done 5,000, 6,000 articles in the last couple of years, and I can't even remember now. But anyway, we will literally put a table in every single one of our articles because we know that that's part of the user experience. And I'm a very visual person. I'm not great at reading online, and I think a lot of people are like me. And so it's helpful to break your slabs of text up into very, very short sections. So we literally say to our writers, one paragraph, one idea, one paragraph. That's it. And your paragraph will always be much shorter than you think, and then it will be shorter again than what you think it is. And so when you have very short pieces of text, it makes it much easier for people like me who are skim reading or just busy, or I don't know, the dog's barking or something. It makes them much easier to pick out words in that text. So that's another thing to do for helpful content. And with all of these things that I'm saying, we have a checklist in our team, and we don't pay our writers unless they meet that checklist. We literally say to them, we've got our quality checkers, and we assess, the quality checkers assess that article, and we literally just say, sorry, it didn't meet the checklist. And it's up to the writer to meet the checklist, not for us to point it out. And so the listeners to this podcast, all your customers, everyone can just have it in your mind that if you create a checklist with these points that I'm saying in mind, you don't have to pay anyone unless they meet that checklist. So that's the third thing. So another thing is bullet points, and ordered lists. So again, it's all about breaking up ideas. So one of the things that we do in our content's starting to get a little bit of a style to it now, but one of the things we do in our content is in the very first section, we summarize in 3 to 5 bullet points what people will learn and benefit from by reading the article. So when someone enters that article, they read that first, sentence which always sort of says, we empathize with whatever your problem is. Yes, it's hard to buy a graduation gift for teenagers or whatever. And then we'll have 3 to 5 bullet points that will simply say, in this article, we're going to help you uncover what the best, colours are for particular people, or what the best writing action is, or whether it needs to be a hard-wearing pen or not, etc. And so we never reiterate, we never repeat the subheadings because that information is already in the subheadings. We just we sort of show what the benefit might be. So that's like a fourth thing that I think is really helpful content.
Well, this is really great information. I want to summarize a little bit. It's interesting. We share a prototype article with our clients when we start working with them. So we have a PDF and it's a short paragraph, 1 headline, 2 table of contents, takeaways, intro, blah blah blah, and then a checklist at the end that can go through. It's an interesting. We have a very similar methodology here. So Hotjar definitely can confirm this as well. We have been learning a lot, especially with click statistics, where you say, why do people not action here? Because then you do a heat map and you see the click something somewhere else. So it's not even.
I can tell you about that one too. Yeah, it's really, I can tell you about that.
Fascinating.
So with the clicks, one of the things that I learned, because I watched 100 of these sort of Hotjar, I don't know what do you call them, like recordings of your screen?
Yeah, it's like a session recording or something like that.
Yeah, session recording.
Screen recording.
Yeah, I was desperate. This client that I talked about, that last agency client that we had, a couple of 100,000 visitors for, I sat there and watched these screen sessions, and we had designed, I have this graphic design, and we designed the most beautiful looking panel in the right-hand side column with the most gorgeous button, the most beautiful graphics, a little subtle animation that, skimmed ever so delicately across the button. You know what those people clicked on? They clicked on the word click here in the text in the blog. So again, I sat there and I watched, and because we had so much traffic, I was able to keep changing the page and just reloading and then clear out all the sessions and watch again. It was so much fun. If you're a nerd, it was so much fun. And I tested things. I was trying to get them to go to an app. And so I would literally say, buy app. No one clicked on that. No one was certainly clicking on the fancy designed, button on the, call to action buttons. And then after a while, I kept just simplifying. I got rid of all the buttons. I got rid of all the text in the middle that was like, buy this app because it's the best thing ever. I got rid of all the links on that. And I ended up with a page that just literally had a description. And then the very last bit of text was click here. And that's how we got that 60% click through, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I learned is that people click on text links inside tables. Mm-hmm. Because tables are an authority piece. When you see a table, you generally think to yourself, well, this is data. It must be true. These are facts inside a table. And so we literally put the links through to the products inside a table. And again, it's just a simple text link. And all the bunnies just click, 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 click on those types of links. So again, it's all about putting the links in areas that are helpful to the reader and just not trying to trick them with anything.
It's definitely resonating with what Google says, and this is definitely true, or we have at least seen this as well, that the more likely it is that somebody clicks on a link, the more weight it's going to carry. So if you have links all over the place, obviously link choose authority, we say it gets diluted on the mathematical level, but also if you only have a link at the bottom in your last phrase, like you often see in link building articles where it's like, they squeeze in a link in order to be able to charge something, and that's it. Those links are not going to do anything. But also the links in the table is interesting. I sometimes feel we got trained as users a little bit from Wikipedia. So a lot of the concepts we now see as best practices. For example, I always ask our clients to put in table of contents, especially for mobile users, just to make sure they know what's coming. And those internal links and links in tables and presenting things as lists, etc. I feel like Wikipedia, either they were like 20 years ahead of the time with the user experience, or we just got trained by certain authority sites on how we want to consume information we trust. For me, it was always, I've been talking probably in the last 3 years about Google really being afraid of artificial intelligence. And what I feel sometimes is that the way we present articles, or how you describe it, with visuals, with elaborated images, with tables, etc., this is not something AI can do right now.
No,
you can have an AI do the articles Google would wish this mom stuff could already compare articles in different languages and draw its own conclusions. It's not there yet. Might get there yet. Right now, when you see an article and this has a table and the information is elaborated and it has elaborated visuals, it's not an AI article. I think this could be part of the reason why Google ranks them so well, because they just know this is definitely coming from a source of authority and knowledge, and it's not something that's just quickly copied together. And even if you see this is affiliate sites have been doing this a lot, and they had been getting really good rankings. The problem is that they copy too much, so they don't take this extra step very often to elaborate or make up their own mind or add some value. But they have been doing this for years, and it was working really, really well. Affiliate sites very often, I saw very small affiliate sites do really well just because they present the information so well. Because they
beautifully done. Yeah. That's one of the things that we noticed as well. We used a tool called Surfer, SEO, which is kind of like a search engine, kind of like a keyword management tool for articles. We used that on probably 2,000 articles. And then we stopped using it. And, you know, like Surfer definitely has its place for lower end, I think, writers maybe. And, you know, for certain keyword sort of placements. But anyway, I won't defend it. But Surfer's definitely got its place. But we don't use it anymore. And our work's even better now and does even better because we don't worry so much about the actual keywords or density of keywords that are appearing. Sure, we make sure we've got the right, you know, seed keywords in and all the related keywords, but what we're focused on is creating a really good a really good reading experience for people so that there's lots of different interesting points that the reader can, you know, land on and rest on with their eyes. And it really is about resting your eyes as you go through. So one of the other things that we do, and again, something to add to people's checklist is we always include testimonials. So if we're writing an article about, I don't know, fountain pens, we will grab testimonials or product reviews from clients out of Amazon or out of their own store, and we contextually place them into the article. So if we're talking about, say, grip, if we're talking about the grip of a fountain pen, we will go and find a testimonial from a customer, from our client, that talks about the grip comfort of that particular pen. And we link it back into Amazon, wherever that link, you know, wherever that testimonial was, etc. And so again, that's helpful. It's helpful to see in someone else's words what they think about the grip of a particular pen. And I don't think that the content mills can produce content that is visually interesting and skim readable. And those tools like Surfer, fantastic as they are for a certain purpose, they can't create that experience. I suppose that's what I was trying to say about Surfer. So they can't create that elevated experience for the reader.
I think where people get it wrong is that AI is not going to move the experienced writer out of the equation. So they're not going to just get your content up and you don't have to worry about blog writing anymore. This is where I see a lot of clients come to me and say, is AI already ready so this can keep my blog maintained, etc. And we're using Surfer. We have been using other tools, Inlinks, Phrase. They all serve the purpose to not do what I did 10 years ago with handwritten notes, which was going through the top 20 results and noting down what they have in common, what kind of keywords and what kind of queries and what kind of structure. Do they have videos? Do they have infographics, etc.? So now we fire up Surfer, and the machine learning helps us analyze very quickly what we might be missing. A very, very important example, and this is definitely in my memory, was an internet service provider, and they weren't ranking. And they weren't ranking because we then figured out they weren't talking about an internet connection, right?
Yes, and I know. We've had those clients.
Google was missing this term internet connection. They're one of the leading providers in, I think this was Australia.
Yeah.
One of the leading internet service providers, right? They talk about everything, 5G, high speed, bandwidth, I don't know. They don't talk about a freaking internet connection, right? And we fire this up and say, look, the only term that's missing, let's talk about this is an internet connection, what we are offering, right? So sometimes we get so stuck in our technical specific industry specific mind that we don't take a step back and say, how do people actually call this? So we had another example from Austria where this was there are two names how you can name the front door in German. and it just had one on the page. And you would expect, and this is again where I say Google isn't half as smart as they pretend to be. You could expect Google knows this is a synonym and still ranks it for the other term as well. No, it didn't. It was putting
but it's
in
not
this
sure.
Term. It was putting in this term, and within 5 days, this was an authority site. Within 5 days, it was ranking on page 1 for these other terms. But and it's so, and this is very often where I see a lot of advantage with those machine learning tools that analyze this and that help you can paste in the text and say, am I missing something? Am I missing a subtopic? Every top ranking article is talking about, and this might have escaped my research. And then I see this. I'm always telling my writers, look, first user experience, then server SEO and the relevant keywords of the ones they suggest. So this is how we try to go about it. We do use it, I think, on pretty much all articles right now, just to really double check. So I understand you have a more creative approach. Probably we have a more technical approach. Ultimately, I think everybody needs to have a user-friendly, reader-friendly article.
Yeah. And just like going back to one of your points you said a little bit earlier about the AI, I think that Google I think Google does look at CSS files. I think it looks at layout. I think it looks for those elements. Like as you were saying, those affiliate sites, some of those affiliate people take such care with the appearance of their websites. They just look beautiful. And I think that Google can tell when someone has slapped together, and the CSS hasn't been tweaked and styled and it doesn't look good. I think Google can tell when care hasn't been taken with that. So I just wanted to sort of put that point back in as well. Like, I think, No,
absolutely. Just a visual aspect. And I talked about this in one of the first podcast episodes with Greg Merrilis from Studio One Design. And he even mentioned the figure how many milliseconds you have until you make up your mind. And this was fascinating to me. So you come to a website, even before you have time to read the text, you already know if you trust these guys, if you like them, if the brand is serious for you, if you think they're going to help you, even before you read the text. So definitely it just makes sense for Google to look into layout, look into design, look into whether they just use a template that's one of the most used WordPress templates out there, or if this is a custom design, how much effort they put into this. It just absolutely makes sense. And it should also come back through the user experience signals.
Yeah. And also with the blog articles, I think, I know myself, I will literally look, because obviously we interview, we hire writers. I look at hundreds of application emails. I can tell there's a pattern now. So I just literally open up that email, and if there's slabs of text and it's badly laid out, I don't trust the information. It's exactly the same with blog articles. Sometimes you can get away with it. Sort of think, you can get away with it sometimes if the website's doesn't look beautiful, but that will usually be because its reputation, precedes it. I'm thinking SEO by the sea, that sort of, those websites by these absolute SEO nerds don't often look beautiful, but because that the content in them is just incredible. You can trust them. But I think it's true with the content, and that's what Google's saying is, and that's one of those engagement signals is whether it bounces out quickly. And I think you've got more chance of keeping of readers on the website if the article looks beautiful, if it looks visually interesting, and it's got these sort of aspects that I'm talking about, for the checklist, if it's got those in it. And I'll give you one more. I'll tell you one more. You'll like this one too, is that author profiles. There have been tests that say that adding an author profile doesn't really move the needle in terms of Google for the Google EAT aspects. But I still think for the reader, it might have an engagement aspect, such as a lower bounce rate. And so again, just as a checklist, whenever someone has a writer who writes for them, always get a little profile and make sure that profile is skewed towards the content on the website. So just because someone's a copywriter by trade doesn't mean that they don't love fountain pens or they don't love teacups. You can always write a sentence about what your expertise is about fountain pens or teacups and how much you love them. And so again, a nice photo, that sort of stuff makes people trust that content a little bit more. And so that's another thing that you'd ask for writers to include.
Absolutely. I think it ties into with one phrase I've seen in the description of the helpful content update, and I want to read this out as well, where they say, does your content leave readers feeling like they need to search again to get better information from other sources? So this is essentially stating what's called pogo sticking. This is what I have been telling clients for 10 years, where I said, look, what what kind of signal will Google pick up if they come to your page, don't find what they're looking for, go back and search for something else? It's just logic that Google picks up the signals they can easily track.
Yeah.
It's like the most easiest thing they can track is that somebody searches, clicks somewhere, goes back, searches somewhere else, never comes back. So what does this mean? The first result obviously wasn't what they were looking for in this regard. And this is just another signal. So now Google also ties in, and this was we used to be called search a task accomplishment. So where people have a task in mind and they want to know the height of the Eiffel Tower, now Google, as kind as they are, they just put it out in the search results. Nobody gets the traffic anymore anyway. But they ultimately they are consistent with serving the user. And when we have this in mind and we say, okay, what do people probably want to see when they come with this keyword to this page? Can we let them know at the top? And we have run a lot of experiments with changing the top section, like you mentioned, like the key takeaways or the summary on top, etc. Has been working really well for us as well. Similar things. Just adding an intro. I'm preparing right now a presentation for next week. Just adding an intro that was SEO optimized. Added like 15 to 25% performance. Just adding an intro to it. We didn't do anything else on the text. The top section is just so important because people need to know at the top that this page is going to help them. What we did on one side that got severely penalized with the core update was remove like they had like a big header on top and you need to scroll down to actually find what this article is about. Just to remove the header. It took a couple of weeks and they were back up. Just because we focus, what is the user actually going to want, and how can we avoid that many people swipe back and click on a different search result, especially on mobile phones.
So what I'd say is if we were going to add that to a checklist for an article writer, I would say the first 25 words need to reiterate, summarize the promise that's made in the article title and add in a qualifying statement such as a fact. So that's how we break that down in our team. And then we take it a little step further. So maybe for your presentation next week, just, you can mention me. Every single, I don't even know what your presentation's about. It could be bad. Anyway. And then every single, well, here we go. Every single subheading, we also get our writers to do the exact same thing. So every single subheading, the first 12 words are essentially a reiteration of whatever the subheading is in the affirmative or negative. And then we qualify it with a couple of extra aspects like a fact or a quote, and it's not so simplistic as that, but we kind of reword it into a benefit statement. And so again, people are able to skim read because they rest their eyes for a moment on the subheading. And then, of course, the next thing they read is the next 10 to 12 words. And so we're just reaffirming what they've read in their subheading. And that works really well for us.
No, absolutely. And it's also one of the main tactics we use, for example, to try to get a featured snippet, because the subheadline might be what is the best pen for a manager? I don't know. Yep. And then it says the best pen for a manager is blah, blah, blah. And then this
because
is really
blah, blah, blah.
And then because is really important as well, right? And this is then really a really good candidate for featured snippets. So whenever we see someone come up in the top 5 or so, we try to bake these kinds of things in if they don't have it yet. And very often you can then get the featured snippet just making this affirmative statement because Google isn't as smart. So they really rely on words on the page. And this is a little bit a thing I think needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Google is just, I think nothing would happen if they didn't announce updates. So the entire SEO agency goes crazy and I stopped watching all those analyses where people have like a million sites they track all the time to figure out is this now putting more emphasis on university links, or is this now putting more emphasis on the 13th word on the
I don't have time for that.
Neither do I, but I'm definitely an SEO nerd, and I used to consume all this data and make my own conclusions and all this. Now, and I'm saying I think nothing would happen if they didn't announce an update. They're doing updates every single day. Fair enough.
Yeah.
If they didn't announce their core updates or the major updates, you would just say, there was a ranking drop. Now I need to figure out again what is it that Google wants to see, and try to create my version of it and draw my conclusions. But sometimes those updates are really more PR than anything. And Google is so smart, and Google is is now mobile optimized, and it's going to take speed. And like the Core Web Vitals, the entire marketing machine around the Core Web Vitals for 2 years was crazy. I've yet to see a site that's ranking higher because the Core Web Vitals are better, right? And there was so much such a big hype. Obviously, tech companies made a lot of money optimizing websites. I do realize Google saves a lot of money. They can crawl those websites now in the faster way. They don't have to so much processing time to process faster sites now. It's really good for them. But very often, updates just need to be taken with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I can't remember. There was one update. And of course, it kills the story because I can't remember what the update was. But there was an update about a year ago, and everyone got their knickers in a knot about it. And I was just thinking to myself, that's not real. Google's just, I mean, of course, I could be likely completely wrong, but I just felt like that's just ridiculous. It doesn't matter. Google's just saying that to scare everyone. I think it was it wasn't the HTTPS thing, but it was something like that where it was just like Google's just saying that to scare everyone, to make it easier for the crawler to come through. There's not going to be a big penalty. That was the thing that my reasoning was. Google has to cope and crawl with a huge amount of junk on the internet, like billions of pages of junk. If Google couldn't crawl billions of pages of absolutely slow loading, junky websites with broken HTML, it wouldn't have a business. Mm-hmm. So of course it's worked out how to crawl slow loading, badly constructed, websites. As long as they've got a little bit of value and people are linking to them for an obvious reason, then it works out how to crawl them. Otherwise it wouldn't have a business. So it was something, I can't remember what the update was, but I was just kind of like, Google can tolerate a lot of garbage. So don't worry about it. Most people's websites aren't that bad. And everyone gets so upset about it. And it's quite simple. It's just like Google. I sort of also think, you've been doing SEO for 20 years as well. And it's this thing of, I don't feel like anything's fundamentally changed in 20 years. It has in all the little hacks and all the black hat stuff where as you said, white keywords on white backgrounds. But fundamentally, all the really good sites that had good content back then, it's still the same. Good websites that are popular, that have good content or good product or whatever it might be, those are the ones that naturally float.
Absolutely. And what we just see is when people say SEO has changed, very often it's the competitive landscape that changed. So we have clients that were like industry leaders 10 years ago. Yeah. Whatever they wrote about their industry was ranking right away. Right now you have 500 competitors and 200 YouTubers probably doing the exact same thing. And you didn't have this back then. So they said, no, Google changed and SEO changed. SEO doesn't work anymore. It's just a different landscape. You need to just pick different battles and things still work out again.
And have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have some fun. Produce something you're proud of, right? Produce something you're proud of. And if you just say, look, if somebody comes in with this query, this is going to be the best article they can find. And whatever they do on this page, if it's the best and the lead magnet is good, you even get an opt-in. But this is just the best they can find when they search for this query. Yeah. And I think that's a good foundation for a strategy. I want to thank you very much. Katrina, this was really helpful. Just really recap a little bit the checklist. We are going to put this over at seoleverage.com/podcast. This is episode 88, and we're going to
lucky number.
Put this put this checklist in there with a little bit of as a little bit of a help. So definitely, what I can learn from your experience now. So visuals are important. Visual aspect of articles is important. Read and user experience being really important for Google just to figure things out, because a lot of things they just know until they have a lot of users seeing this. Interesting point you raised about tables, really trying to bake tables into content with it. Maybe it's not the first thing that comes to mind to have a table in this article, but there's always a way how you can compare, contrast different things, and even have a link in there or a click here or something like this. This might attract attention and give us an additional competitive edge. Short paragraphs, easy to read, checklist, bullet points, ordered lists. All these.
Gosh, you've been paying attention, Gert.
I take notes. Is my way of listening.
You're gone. I had no idea. I'm literally thinking, gosh, your mind is like a steel trap.
Yeah.
You just remembered everything.
I have this all in my memory. No, but definitely what we don't, I need to ask my writers, I think we don't work too much with testimonials. We might pick this one up. Testimonials inside articles. We're not so much in e-commerce, but I think it makes sense just even if it's not a product testimonial, just having like a different person having an opinion about
it's a different voice.
You see this very often. You see this a tweet. You can pick a tweet and say, okay, you find a tweet about everything. Somebody having a tweet about
just has to be relevant
update. Absolutely. If it's relevant, it's also going to make the user experience better. And then the author profiles, definitely, I think more and more people, and with AI as well, with people being aware that AI might have written this content, you want to know who is behind this, who is putting their face, hopefully the right one, and the actual face next to their name and the article. Definitely really, really important. I think we've learned a lot. I guess
Can I say one last thing, Gert?
Absolutely. I was going to ask you if I'm missing something.
The last thing I'll say, and it sounds so corny, but it really resonates with me, but content is king, right? But creativity is queen. Mm-hmm. And that's what people are missing. I think SEOs in particular get so left brain. They get so focused on numbers, and I'm looking at you. They get so focused on numbers and the analytics, diving into those reports where people track 1 million websites to see what's happening in the algorithm. Have a bit of fun. Get creative. And the creative is where those moments are, those exciting moments are when a piece of content or an idea just takes off like a rocket, because you get creative with it and you do the work on it. So content is king, but creativity is queen.
Awesome. Great finalizing statement. Thank you so much, Katrina. Where can people go to get in touch with you and find more about you?
Just CopySmiths.com is our website. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm mainly on LinkedIn. Twitter I gave up on. But I'm also on Facebook a fair bit as well, because I help out in a lot of communities in Facebook, in writing communities. So, yeah, but mainly just CopySmiths.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody listening. This episode is going to be, as I said, over at seoleverage.com/podcast. And if you'd like to check out how we analyze sites, how we do things with the SEO Leverage app, go over to SEO Leverage and book a demo with me and walk you through the app and show you around. Thank you so much for listening.